Hey, what's happening, everybody? Chris Burke here. It's a great day in a great town. Great to be alive. Welcome to this edition of Behind the Mortgage. This is a very special edition and super excited to share with everybody. I had the opportunity to sit down with Mark and Kay Frucci out of our Colorado Springs office and talk about our all-in-one program. This is a fairly new program to us. It's been around for a long time, and not a lot of lenders have access to this program. Matter of fact, Mark and Kay are the only group that has actually funded one. We have a couple more in process right now, but hopefully, after you guys hear the interview with Mark and Kay, it'll spark your interest to learn a little bit more about the program if you don't already. This is something that we're really trying to push because of the uniqueness of the program. And again, not a lot of lenders have access to it. So without further ado, Mark and Kay Frucci, hope you guys enjoy. All right, Mark and Kay Frucci, how are you guys?
We're great, Chris.
Doing great.
Nice. Well, first off, congratulations on our very first funding on the all-in-one loan. That is awesome.
Thanks.
Yes, we're excited.
Everybody's excited, and thanks for taking a few minutes just so we can talk a little bit more about the program and your overall experience. So let's talk. This is the program itself has been around for years, but for us, I think it went live like 3 or 4 months ago. So before the loan that you just funded, did you guys have any experience with this at other companies, or was it when we rolled it out? Was it brand new to you guys?
It wasn't brand new to us. We've never done one before because we've never worked somewhere that offered it. But I've been hearing about the all-in-one loan for at least 10 years. And North Point Bank, which you know is one of the servicers, they have a really pretty big presence here in Colorado Springs. So it is, I wouldn't say it's common by any stretch, but a lot of people have heard about it, and it's not like totally out of the blue. So we've talked to a few loan officers before. I know a few people that have done it on their own house and have nothing but great things to say, but never can really quite explain how it works.
Yeah, the details kind of get lost a little bit sometimes when you ask someone, "Oh, you've done it all in one? Explain it to me." And they're like,
Right.
It's a loan. That's about all I know about it.
Yeah. Well, I guess it would make it a little easier just in terms of an icebreaker to start talking about it if people around your area have at least heard of it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because if nobody has and somebody brought it up, it would be very tough for me to even start talking about it. And that actually brings me to my next talking point, which I think is very important. So for this particular client, I mean, how did this even come up? Was it after you did the initial interview and application and say, hey, this guy might benefit? Or did he come to you saying, hey, I've heard about this loan, talk to me, I think, this might be a good strategy for me?
Well, this particular buyer has done a couple of different investment properties, and this one actually he was finishing up a 1031 exchange, so he was putting down a decent chunk of money, but he had never heard of the all-in-one. And when Kay looked through his file, why don't you tell Chris what you found?
Well, I was really excited when we rolled out the product because I've been wanting to be able to offer it and learn more about it myself. So I kind of had in the back of my mind that I was kind of looking for a guinea pig. And when I came across somebody, I was going to show him. So he said right from the get-go, I'm putting down all this money on the 1031. I want to pay off the house as fast as possible. He has 5 or 6 other investment properties. And then he has quite a bit of assets that are just sitting in a savings account, really not doing anything for him. So I thought, he might be our guinea pig. So we showed him the regular loan. Of course, he didn't like the interest rates, of course, and that it was going to take him, even paying extra 15 years or more to pay it off. Sure. And so we were like, well, we have this other product that you might be interested in. And we ran the scenario thing, and it showed that he could pay it off just based on the rental income and moving a portion of his assets from the savings account it was in to the HELOC account there, to the all-in-one account. He could pay it off in less than 6 years. I think it was like 3 years if he deposited his paychecks as well.
Yeah.
So do you think that kind of sealed the deal for the borrower, just in terms of the side-by-side comparison with the simulator, with a traditional forward mortgage or normal mortgage and the all-in-one? And he's just like, you got to be kidding me. In 6 years, I'll pay it off.
Yeah, he was really excited about how fast he could pay it off, but still leery about the interest rate. He got a little hung up on the rate because it is high, but I think he said to you, Mark, well, I'm going to trust you and hope it works out.
Yeah.
So, and we told him up front, you're our guinea pig. We haven't done this before. It's a new product, but we, talked to him about it's been around a long time and so on and so forth. But I think he really was trusting us, and he really liked when he saw the simulator and how fast he could pay it off.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that I like about the simulator is you can almost do like a what if and say, okay, if a borrower is stuck on that higher rate and the margin and all that, say, okay, worst case, it's never been this high, but let's say it is this high. You're still going to pay your house off, depending on the scenario, quicker than a normal, 30-year fixed.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So
I think that one of the big things that we felt was very, very valuable was the training that we went through prior to the rolling this out. And we just had a very little bit of confidence, but we realized just from going through the training that simulator was a great tool. And it wasn't anything that was like, Wizard of Oz, hide behind the curtain, don't show this to anybody. We literally just said, hey, here's the simulator, let's put in the numbers. And he sat there and looked over my shoulder, and he was just like, oh my gosh, that sounds like it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I do remember, Kay, that you chatted me saying, hey, I think I might have one. What do you think? And I'm like, let's do it. Let's go for it. And I think it made people a little bit more comfortable because it was a new build, right? So we did have a little bit more time just to work through, any potential kinks or hoops, since it was our first one. So
yeah, and for me, I'm super conservative. This is a pretty small town that we're lending in, and a reputation is everything. You cannot close late or have any hiccups. And so I'm always paranoid about brokering loans because I just feel like we lose a little bit of control. So that's one of the biggest reasons. New product, new lender, all the things. So yeah, it did work out great on this one though.
Awesome. Well, now that you guys have one under your belt and feeling pretty confident, feeling good about it, are you going to be targeting, because I get asked this a lot and it's so new, I really don't know the answer. Are you going to be targeting specific borrower, like a borrower profile, like investors or just people with a ton of money in the bank? Or do you think this is a good, solution for anybody?
So, we first thought about it and we were like, oh yeah, this is kind of a real niche product. It's you've got to, jump through the hoops. And then the more we thought about it, we thought, well, those hoops are not super difficult to jump through. I mean, you just have to have certain goals. You want to pay your loan off early. You've got to have, decent income, and, you just got to know that you're going to do the certain, hoops. You're going to jump through the hoops in order to achieve those goals. And, it really is something that can be utilized by, a lot of people, a lot more than just the, investor that's got 45 doors in his portfolio.
I think that it's great for investors. It's good for anybody that is maybe in sales that has, commission income where they can get really large amounts of income that they can kind of park there. As long as they have more income than expenses. They have to, have money left over at the end of the month. Otherwise, it's not going to work for them. And I feel like somebody who's slightly more savvy, then, it's not going to be for a first-time home buyer.
Yeah, right.
But one thing, we recently hired a loan officer here, Daryl Gargala, that came from North Point Bank. And it's funny because every time I talk to him about a scenario, he's like, oh, well, what about an all-in-one? And so he's bringing up a lot of ideas I never would have thought of to offer it to that person. Like we have someone right now that was going to take a HELOC out on their primary to buy a new primary. And he was like, well, why don't they just do an all-in-one? Because then they always have access to that and blah, blah, blah. So it's even for people who just want to have access to all this equity that they're sitting on, and they don't have to pay on that additional equity, until they draw it, because it's basically a HELOC.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's a great point. How is, just from an origination standpoint, how was this, again, being our first one, how was your overall experience with the process, getting it in Encompass? underwriting, docs. Because again, I watched this like a hawk and got involved, as much as I could just to make sure that it went as smooth as it could. But how did you guys feel?
Well, you can talk about the sales and origination part first.
So the sales portion, was fairly simple. I mean, we just walked him through the simulator and we kind of showed him the pros and cons. We're not big arm twister salespeople. We're kind of show them the facts and let them make the decision. And it was a pretty obvious choice to go with the all-in-one just because it met all of his goals and it didn't have any negatives, whatsoever in that whole the whole process. And so the upfront sales part was great. And then Kay, you kind of handled the operations portion.
Yeah, so it was a little bit blind leading the blind just because it was the first time. But as usual, our internal team, our processor Sarah, and you did a great job helping us and figuring out, what the next steps are. I will say I was very pleasantly surprised. CMG was very fast, much faster than I was anticipating with getting their documents out, with underwriting. We had every time we sent anything in, underwriting was done in 24 hours. The bad thing is once you get your initial underwrite, they will not look at any conditions until you have all of them. So that, this guy had a lot of moving parts because he's got all these different investment properties. So it took him a while to get everything. And even though we had 45 or 60 days, it came down to the wire because it was only maybe 10 days before closing that he got us the final thing. So that was a little bit wonky. But other than that, everything was very smooth with CMG for sure.
Good. And to come full circle, at the closing, I kind of was a little anxious going to that closing just because it was a new product and new terminology and new everything. And so I was just kind of a little bit on pins and needles, kind of going, oh gosh, hopefully they don't ask me a question I don't know the answer to. But my goodness, I lucked out like you wouldn't believe. The actual title closer had just done her own all-in-one about a year ago. And so she knew everything. Wow. Cheryl Lynn was awesome. She was like, oh, and I'll explain this. And then when she would explain it, she'd turn to me and she'd go, is that right, Mark? And I'd go, uh-huh. And it worked out great. So
that's all you got to keep her on speed dial for the next one that you guys have 100%.
Well, we've had a couple of other closings, not all in ones, but with her, and she just said, hey, I'm your girl for all the all-in-ones. And I said, you're already, penciled in there. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I know what we've done internally after watching this, from start to finish is we've done a lot of internal policies and procedures with the compliance and everything like that, just so we know exactly, internally and operation wise what we're looking at. Would you guys do now that, again, that you funded one on your next one, would you do anything different in terms of explaining the program to the borrower or really anything? Or do you feel like just in terms of explaining to the borrower and how they understood it, everything went pretty well on this one?
I think that I'm a perfectionist, so I think we should practice more of our spiel so we have it down a little bit better and we can come across a little bit more confident. But really, like Mark said, the simulator does a great job of walking through, especially if you sit down and do it with them. We did it ahead of time, of course, to make sure it would work. But then when you sit down and kind of do it with them, verifying all the pieces that you put in of what their deposits will be, I feel like it starts to make a little bit more sense to them of what they can expect afterwards, that they're going to be depositing XYZ money every month and when they're going to be charged their interest and just kind of how it all works. And then CMG does they have us do it. So either the processor or the loan officer, shortly before closing, you have to do this interview and fill out this form that kind of walks through so that the borrower is saying, yes, I understand, this is my rate, this is how it works, and so on and so forth. So I think that also helps them, at the end of the process that they've agreed to what they're signing.
Sure.
And hopefully you don't have any issues at closing.
No, I know. It's such a unique product. I mean, that's why they do it, just so, there's no issue, hopefully no issues at the closing table, because we've already ran through it on that, closing call or whatever they call it. So
yeah. I really feel like anytime you can practice more with your pitch is going to be better. Same thing like with a reverse mortgage, right? It's such a totally different product. You really have to know the ins and outs as best you can, and practice makes perfect.
Well, I think with this particular one, it was nice to sit down with him with the simulator, because we probably went through 4 or 5 different simulations of, well, what if I deposit this much money, you know, as a lump, or, you know, I'll put this much money every month. And so we played with a couple of different scenarios, and we found one that he really liked and was comfortable with. And that's the one that we ran with.
Nice.
So it was nice to be able to, in our case, it was a learn as you go, but yeah, it was nice to be able to have those options right there on the fly with the client sitting right next to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I think it's almost like the client does have to be sitting there, because you like send them PDFs of stuff. Like for me, if I was a client, I would just be like, I just don't really understand.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think it's a live presentation thing, whether you're doing it over Zoom and sharing your screen, or if you have the luxury of sitting with them, definitely it's got to be a live thing, because there's so many questions.
Absolutely.
And it was weird going back to like a HUD and different, the old school disclosures.
The old school. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yep.
And no, 3-day waiting period, none of that stuff.
Well, that's one of the things that I think it was Amethyst or somebody. They're like, well, you're sure we don't need to do this? I'm like, no, I promise. It's just going way back.
Yeah,
exactly.
It kind of almost reminds me in like the option arms that we used to do back in the day. Those were supposed to go to a similar type of client that, is maybe a high earner and has money left over. They're more savvy. It ended up getting sold to everybody, which was terrible. But the intent of it was, I think, similar to this in who you would target.
Sure. That makes sense. So do you guys have any tips or anything for people that, want to learn more about the program, might be a little bit, intimidated? I mean, obviously it sounds like going in and having the loan officer mess around with scenarios on the simulator, number one, just to get used to it. But really anything else that you guys, would suggest?
Well, it's just like hitting a curveball. You probably strike out a lot in the beginning, but you keep practicing, and you just make sure that you understand exactly what the product is and the advantages and the limitations, and you just practice.
They have really great training on their website, and one of the trainings, I can't remember if it was live or recorded, they interviewed one of their top originators. And so hearing kind of how he did things was really helpful. So I would just encourage everybody to go to their website and sign up for all the trainings that they have. I think most of them are like on demand, but then they do have live webinars also.
Yeah, I do think their resource center is pretty robust for somebody that does want to take the time to really learn about the program. So
yeah, for sure. They have a lot in there.
Well, awesome. I mean, I think those are the main talking points that I wanted to go through with you guys. Like I said, I mean, I really appreciate the time. Everybody's excited about the program, and I am just so happy that we got one under our belt. And like I said, yeah, I'm super excited when you chatted me. Hey, I think I got one. Let's do it.
Yeah, it was our whopping $160,000 loan, because we went down 300 or whatever it was.
I know, but hopefully more to come. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, it's always great to learn new items, learn new things, and the cool thing is that we have the support of just a phenomenal team behind us. The processing, underwriting, they're just beyond top notch. I mean, they help support, and if there is an oops, then they're not going to be like, well, Mark just screwed this one up. It's like, no, Hey Mark, why don't you relook at this and maybe make this change.
Yeah, and you and the sales support team are great when we send 10 emails a day of like, okay, now what about this and what about that? So we appreciate all the support.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all marching in the same direction, right? We all have the same goals, helping families. So I love it.
Yeah.
Well, again, you guys, I won't keep you any longer, but I really appreciate the time, and I will let you get back to the rest of your day.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Thanks again, you guys.